Meditation is concentration on a single object. It fulfills the purpose of keeping away diverse thoughts and fixing the mind on a single thought, which must also disappear before realization. Realization is nothing new to be acquired. It is already there, but obstructed by a screen of thoughts, says a great Indian sage named Ramana. All our attempts are directed to lift this screen, and then realization is revealed. Meditation is just a tool, and the real purpose of self enquiry is to find the self which is ever shining as I, the undivided and pure reality, which is the only raft with which an individual who is deluded can acquire his true self, says Ramana. He advocated the method of self enquiry over meditation and taught that the thought of who am I should be made persistent. This thought of who am I will destroy all other thoughts. The body, which is composed of five senses, should not be considered the self. After this is realized, the mind with which one thinks and the thoughts which arise in it should also not be regarded as the real self. After all these are negated, the only thing that remains is the observer, or the pure consciousness. And if one is able to abide by it, he will get the knowledge of its nature. The nature of this pure consciousness is pure bliss, says the Indian sage Ramana, whom Carl Jung has also mentioned in his writings. You are the mind, or think that you are the mind. The mind is nothing but thoughts. Now, behind every particular thought, there is a general thought, which is the I. That is yourself. Let us call this I the first thought. Stick to this I thought and question it to find out what it is. When this question takes strong hold on you, you cannot think of other thoughts. What happens when you make a serious quest for the self is that eventually the I thought also disappears and something else from the depths take hold of you, and that is not the I which commenced the quest. He did sometimes say that regular periods of formal practice of meditation were good for the beginners, but he never advocated long periods of sitting meditation, and he always showed his disapproval when any of his devotees expressed a desire to give up their mundane activities in favor of a meditative life. According to Ramana, the true reality is simply the loss of ego. Destroy the ego by seeking its identity. Because the ego is no entity, it will automatically vanish and reality will shine forth by itself. This is the direct method, whereas all other methods are done only by relating to the ego. In those paths, there arise so many doubts, and the eternal question, who am I, remains to be tackled finally. Beginners in self enquiry are advised by Ramana to put their attention on the inner feeling of I and to hold that feeling as long as possible. They would be told that if their attention was distracted by other thoughts, they should revert to the awareness of the I thought. Whenever they become aware that their attention has wandered, they have to get back to the feeling of the I. He suggested various aids to assist this process. One could ask oneself, who am I? Or where do I come from? Beginners in self enquiry are advised by Ramana to put their attention on the inner feeling of I and to hold that feeling as long as possible. They would be told that if their attention was distracted by other thoughts, they should revert to the awareness of the I thought. Whenever they become aware that their attention has wandered, they have to get back to the feeling of the I. He suggested various aids to assist this process. One could ask oneself, who am I? Or where do I come from? But the ultimate aim is to be continuously aware of the I, which assumes that it is responsible for all the activities of the body and the mind. In the early stages of practice, attention to the feeling I is a mental activity which takes the form of a thought or a perception. As the practice develops, the thought I gives way to a subjectively experienced feeling of I. And when this feeling ceases to connect and identify with thoughts and objects, it completely vanishes. In his method, Ramana states, when self enquiry reaches this level, there is an effortless awareness of being, in which individual effort is no longer possible, since the I who makes the effort has temporarily ceased to exist. It is not self realization, since the I thought periodically reasserts itself, but it is the highest level of practice. Repeated experience of this state of being weakens and destroys mental tendencies which cause the I thought to arise. And when their hold has been sufficiently weakened, the power of the self destroys the residual tendencies so completely that the I thought never rises again. This is the final and irreversible state of self realization. This practice of self attention or awareness of the I thought is a gentle technique which bypasses the usual repressive methods of controlling the mind. It is not an exercise in concentration, nor does it aim at suppressing thoughts. It merely invokes awareness of the source from which the mind springs. The method and the goal of self enquiry is to abide in the source of the mind and to be aware of what one really is by withdrawing attention and interest from what one is not. Being what one already is effortless, since beingness is always present and always experienced. On the other hand, pretending to be what one is not requires continuous mental effort, even though the effort is nearly always at subconscious level. It therefore follows that in the higher stages of self enquiry, effort takes attention away from the experience. Ultimately, the self is not discovered. Ramana teaches, do not meditate but be. Do not think that you are, just be. Do not think about the being, but just abide in yourself.